I know when we were at the DA's office, there was a guy who regularly was on jail docket who thought he was Jesus Christ. That man had some competency issues. So he was actually, I took a plea from him and I had to point out to his attorney, like, he signed this Jesus Christ, and that's not his name. His name was not Jesus Christ.
We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we're trying something a little bit different. So this is not a firearm specific topic. We're doing criminal law with Emily and Leslie.
There you go.
Because much like a pride of lions, it's actually the women in our office who are going out and being the aggressors, killing stuff in the courtroom. We are the trial dogs.
We are.
So I think
we try the
cases
cases together.
We do try the cases together.
Peacefully together.
Again, to combat all of the inferences out there that we somehow are in competition against one another. No, we're good trial buddies. We go to war together.
Yeah.
And we're good at it.
We are.
So we're going to talk about not guilty by reason of insanity. It's in the news right now because a child murderer was just released in Kentucky under these circumstances. So I won't ask you to support the Second Amendment by hitting the like button, but how about let's just get rolling?
There you go.
Okay, Leslie.
You can still hit the like button, though.
You can still hit the like button. Hit the like button for Emily and Leslie. Okay, so we have two separate issues we're going to break down. One is being not competent to stand trial. The other is being found not guilty by reason of insanity. So let's talk about lacking competency for trial first, because they are two completely separate issues.
They are, and it's really interesting. So you can actually be found not guilty by reason of insanity. I mean, that can be your plea, is that like, hey, I was insane at the time of the offense, and actually be perfectly competent to stand trial, which is really, I mean, kind of, you wouldn't think those two would go together. You would think if you're not competent to stand trial, then you could argue not guilty by reason of insanity. If you're going to argue not guilty by reason of insanity, you would think that you might be not competent. And those two can go together.
They can.
Right? So, I mean, someone could not be competent, and also they could be claiming that they were insane. So the difference is competency has to do with your ability to stand trial at that time. So as we've discussed, you know, a lot of these cases take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years to get to trial. So at the time, you might have been a perfectly sane person at the time of the offense. But then as time progresses, as it goes on, you might be, you know, you might go downhill. And when the time actually comes for trial or for any proceeding in a court, so if you're going to do a plea or have any hearings, you have to be competent. Meaning that you have to understand what's going on. And so the standard for competency, at least in Texas, is very low. So basically you have to understand.
I was going to say, Leslie just had this issue with a client.
I did. Yeah. So you basically have to be able to understand the judge's role, the state's role, and your attorney's role, and you have to be able to assist in your defense, meaning that you and your attorney have to be able to have a conversation about what occurred, and you have to be able to help your attorney understand what occurred in a way that they can actually defend your case. And so basically what happens is if one person, typically it's the defense attorney, raises the issue of competency, saying like, hey, you know what, I've been talking to my client, I really don't think they have any idea what's going on. I know when we were at the DA's office, there was a guy who regularly was on jail docket who thought he was Jesus Christ. That man had some competency issues. So he was actually, I took a plea from him and I had to point out to his attorney, like, he signed this Jesus Christ, and that's not his name. His name was not Jesus Christ. So, you know, that attorney had to file for competency and see if this guy actually understood what was happening. And so what happens is you get evaluated by a doctor. So you meet with a doctor, they evaluate you, and they kind of ask you a series of questions to see if you understand what's going on. If they find that you're not competent, then they give a report to the court and say, hey, we found this guy or female is not competent. We need to do some further proceedings. And so at that point, you can either kind of agree that you're not competent and you get put into what's called competency school, essentially. And it's a psych ward, basically, that tries to bring you back to competency.
And how often? So, and we have, I mean, I know you've just had this experience recently. We also, you know, we know the defense attorneys who are representing a pretty notorious school attacker trying to not have YouTube demonetize us. And he is not competent to stand trial.
Yeah.
And they're evaluating him like every
year, I think.
year?
I think
So,
it's yearly.
I mean, it's you're there. You're there for the long haul if
You are.
you're not competent to stand trial.
You are. And what's interesting is that, like, basically the moment they find out that you're competent, you get your trial set. Yeah, and I actually had this happen at the DA's office. There was a woman who was accused of murdering her boyfriend, and she was not competent. And I want to say she was not competent for like 5 or 6 years. And basically, they sent a competency report all of a sudden that was like, "Hey, she's competent. She has a moment of clarity." And that trial got set like the next Monday, and she got tried right then and there. I mean, it is like fast because
Get in your window
exactly
of competency.
So kind of going back to what I was saying, you can either kind of agree and say, yeah, I'm not competent, I need some help, or you can kind of fight it some, and then there has to be some additional testing. And sometimes what can happen is a judge can ask some questions, and the judge can make a determination like, hey, I talked to this person, and I think they're competent for right now.
The judge can overrule the experts, which is bizarre to me.
Yeah.
Because, like, we know a lot of judges who are like, I don't think that you should be trusted over the psychiatrist, but okay, that's fine.
So it's an interesting thing. And then you might have someone who is absolutely competent to stand trial, but they were insane at the time of the incident.
They're insane. Was Judge Burkhalter?
Are you insane?
Were
you insane on the date of the incident?
East Texas judges are the absolute best.
Absolutely.
Yes. So this is a completely different process. So this is sort of the second prong of this is, are you not guilty by reason of insanity? And we have a model penal code definition of this, which we can rely on for, pretty much the whole country. I think it's more than half the states have adopted the model penal code, and the ones who haven't, it's very, very close. And this is found in Model Penal Code section 4.01. And essentially, you can be not guilty by reason of insanity if at the time of the offense, you suffered from a mental disease or defect, step 1. Step 2, that disease or defect rendered you incapable of appreciating the wrongfulness of your conduct or in conforming your conduct to the law. So I actually think back about being at the DA's office, and it wasn't my case, but it was my roommate's case at the time. And she had this guy who was literally wearing a tinfoil hat, sitting in a car in a parking lot, I think in front of the academy on the island. And he thought the aliens were actually there with him. And he had a knife in his hands and he was like slashing it around wildly and yelling things that were very, very threatening. And they got him, arrested him for a terroristic threat, I think.
Okay.
Which thanks GPD, like, well done. That's the loony bin under 41 would have been much more reasonable, but okay. And ultimately, even the state was like, hey, this guy has no idea.
Right.
He's crazy. He thinks the aliens are in the car with him. And like, we're not going to take him to trial even because we all agree he would be found not guilty by reason of insanity because he thinks that he has no idea his conduct was wrong. He thinks he was defending himself from the aliens who were right there and no way to conform his conduct to the law because he is so crazy. So that's the kind of thing we're talking about. Now, unfortunately, this finding can have some really bad consequences to society at large. So what we've got, and you will have seen this in the news recently, and again, I have to talk around this for YouTube's purposes, but there was a man in the state of Kentucky, broke into someone's house. He ended up attacking a 6-year-old little boy who did not survive the attack. This guy was crazy. You don't just break into a random house for no reason. He wasn't trying to burglarize the place. He just, from what I can see of the case, was just nuts. And unfortunately, found not guilty by reason of insanity. And so, because he was found not guilty, Kentucky has a process by which he was categorized as nonviolent, and therefore 10 years later he's walking free in the state of Kentucky right now. And it's got a lot of people really upset. It's got some conservative activists calling for a complete reassessment of this system of not guilty by reason of insanity. Matt Walsh is all over the internet calling for that right now. And you understand why it gets people really, really worked up. So the process by which you are found not guilty by reason of insanity, this is, we'll talk through, we're Texas lawyers. Sorry if everybody gets mad about that. We'll talk through the Texas process, but it's pretty similar in most states. If you are found not guilty by reason of insanity, you don't necessarily walk free, but you might be punished to a lesser extent. So Leslie actually has this direct experience. So
yeah, it was
tell me.
interesting. So one time at the DA's office, I was trying a case, and their defense was insanity, and it happened so infrequently that really no one at the DA's office was able to really help me because no one else had really run into this before. But what was interesting about it is that so they were experts for both sides. There was experts for the state and there was experts for the defense. But typically in a case, you don't get to hear hearsay, right? So if you tell a doctor something, that doctor on the stand can't say, "Oh, well, they told me this." But when you're pleading insanity, everything comes in. So with these two experts, we got to ask, like, well, what did the defendant's mom tell you? And basically everything came in. And it was a really interesting trial. It was a really sad trial. It involved an animal cruelty case.
Oh, those are hard.
Yeah, it was really sad. But the guy ended up getting convicted. It turns out that being insane and being on LSD are two different things, and I think the jury really felt like it was the LSD that was causing him to behave the way he was and not insanity. But it was a really interesting trial process because the rules are just so different when insanity is pled.
Right. So let's say you are found not guilty by reason of insanity. What happens next? Well, a judge is going to decide a couple of things. They're going to decide if you are violent or not, which is going to determine whether or not you could be released immediately. And they're going to determine whether or not you are mentally ill now. So it is possible you are found not guilty by reason of insanity, but the judge says, number one, this was not a violent offense. And number two, you are not currently mentally ill. And if so, you do go back to the streets. Now that is relatively rare. If it's a violent offense, or if you are currently mentally ill, you will be institutionalized somewhere. The judge of the court that you were in can assess that sentence. They can only assess a sentence up to the number of years your crime was punishable by. So for example, if your crime was punishable by 10 years in prison and you are found not guilty by reason of insanity, you're only going to stay in the loony bin for 10 years.
I think that's so crazy.
It's so crazy. And that's Texas.
Yeah.
If you know of something different in your state, please comment below. I would be very interested to hear. But, we also can just send people for shorter periods of time. Your judge can do that. They can send you to the probate courts, who in our state, that's who handles the civil commitment process.
Right.
But you don't necessarily get out. Now, I'm going to put Leslie on the spot here. Do you agree with Matt Walsh? Do we need to reevaluate the whole system and not have not guilty by reason of insanity?
I don't know if we need to not have not guilty by reason of insanity. But I definitely think that just because the sentence was, only 10 years, I think that if you're that insane of a person, that's a danger to society.
You should be able to be committed indefinitely.
Indefinitely, yeah.
We should have more asylums.
Right.
I agree with President Trump. But, I was thinking about it too, because I think you get it from the layman's perspective. Why is there a process by which someone who took a child's life can walk the streets again just because they were crazy? That's the kind of person who should never walk the streets again.
Absolutely.
But then as the defense attorney, you really, we have these guideposts in place for a reason, right? And so it's really hard to say, that guy who didn't know what he was doing, let's say the guy with the aliens, right? 'Cause it's a little easier to talk about that case than it is for someone who's passed. Yeah, but does he deserve to, be convicted of a crime because he thought he was fighting the aliens in a knife in his own car? You should be able to fight all the aliens you want in your own car. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that.
And I guess that's the thing, is that there's some cases, we talk about the extreme cases, right? We're talking about a situation that's so tragic and so sad with the case that Emily was talking about. But, there's the case where the person is running around naked in the middle of the street because they're insane.
Never would have happened in the alien case because he also had tinfoil somewhere else that would have precluded him from being nude.
You gotta protect everything, right?
Well, if you're going to protect yourself from aliens, there's a couple important parts, I suppose. But anyway, this has been a different discussion. I don't know if anyone's going to watch this. I don't know if you're going to like it, but we'll see. If you like them, we'll do more deep dives into criminal law. We hope you enjoyed this discussion. And if you did, don't just like and subscribe. Leave us a comment and let us know, do you want more criminal law with Emily and Leslie, or should we hit the road and go back to guns? But until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.